All right. So to get started with metahumans and what we're going to do in this space, you need in your engine to head to edit in the top left and head to your plugins. We need to enable a handful of plugins so that you have access to the creator and the infrastructure and architecture that supports metahumans. So once you have this plugin menu open, you're going to search for metahuman. There's going to be a ton of things that are there. What I for sure need you to enable is your animator, your calibration processing. Actually, do all of them except for runtime. That's going to be the easiest. If it has the white icon, enable it. Don't restart your engine yet once you get here, because we have to enable one more plugin, and it's just easier to do that all at the same time. If there is a pop-up that says, hey, this is in beta, that's okay. I'm telling you to do it, so let's do it. But we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 MetaHuman plugins enabled. Then you're going to search for LiveLink. And really, the one that I want you to make sure you have selected is just the LiveLink plugin. It might already be enabled. I don't think it is, though. And then if you are interested in it, it might be beneficial to have the LiveLink hub. But no, we don't need the LiveLink hub. I lied. You just need LiveLink and those 7 MetaHuman plugins. Once you've got those toggled on, you can restart your engine. Yeah, just the LiveLink and the MetaHuman ones. So again, once your project reopens, you can close the plugin window. You shouldn't see anything different yet, and that is okay. A quick reminder about this process, about what MetaHuman is. Because you are on an offline installer, that means you are unable to create the skeleton for your MetaHuman. So today, through the end of Monday's class, the expectation is that you get a MetaHuman sculpted and complete to your liking for your story. Once you have that sculpted at the end of Monday, this is being very clear on this deadline. End of Monday's class, you need your MetaHuman done. I'm going to collect your project files and put skeletons and create blueprints for your MetaHumans. Does this make sense to everybody? Is this clear? I don't want our motion capture video fiasco again, where you assume that you can do this at home. You cannot do this past Monday. I will not support you in building your skeleton. Does that make sense? Is that clear to everybody? Okay, so let's do this. Hop into your content drawer, bottom left, and we are going to right click, and we are going to find our MetaHuman tab. You may add a folder, however you want to do your organization. I'm just going to do it in my default. I think I'm inside of my characters folder right now. But you can add a folder. You can put this wherever you want it to be. You're going to find your MetaHuman side. And I want to talk through these things really quick, just so that you understand what things are showing up in your menus in relevance to a MetaHuman. So the first thing that we see here, we have capture data. So we have physical capture data, which is in the term of footage. And of course, you can always hover over these and get the text tooltips. But this is for facial stuff. We aren't going to leverage this type of asset because we're just going to use LiveLink and record an animation, but it's good to know that it's in there. Similar for capture data for the mesh. This is for expression and pose data. We're not going to use that. Capture source is, again, if you're trying to set up a system in your game where maybe the face is being tracked of your player and it represents on the MetaHuman, you could set up a capture source. But what we really care about are these next two. We've got a MetaHuman character and a MetaHuman identity. I want to be very clear about the difference of these. A MetaHuman character is what we are creating. We are going to sculpt a character, and we're going to leverage all of the settings and systems that are available to us so that you can make a character for your cutscenes. The identity, on the other hand, is something that provides tools to create fully rigged metahumans as a system instead of sculpting them yourself. So it's kind of like grabbing that DNA data of your character. We literally think of it as DNA, grabbing their DNA so that you can replicate it later. Does that make sense a little bit? Metahuman performance asset is something that we're not going to use, but it produces an animation sequence for the Metahuman control rig. We'll see what that looks like. We're just going to do a normal sequencer for it when we get there. All right, so what I need you to do is select Metahuman character. I want you to name your character. I'm going to name mine Commander Brash. Once you've named that character and it's saved there, double click in. This might take a while, so I'm going to pause the recording, make sure that you're all doing where we need to be. But you should eventually end up at this screen. All right, a lot of us are here, so let me talk through this because I'm going to set you free pretty fast here to start sculpting and doing what you want. But I want to walk through the basics of what you are seeing right now. So right now, you are seeing the topology of the default Metahuman character. That is this weird kind of blocked out, color blocked character on your screen. If you go to the top middle, there's a drop down that says topology. You can change your character to the skin tone or to a clay model of your Metahuman. So these are useful. Clay is really good for seeing how shadows and highlights and minute details look, whereas the skin is going to be what you're actually going to see when I create your skeletons and blueprints. You can also, next to that, change your lighting. So I know that we're going to be on Mars. They politely have a lighting rig set up that looks pretty close to our Mars setting. If you changed your colors, you can set your default colors and change that around as well. So there's a lot of opportunity there. If I'm not crazy, your guys' oh, it is rendering at Epic. If your engine is running okay, you can leave your rendering at Epic, but you can also drop your rendering quality down, and that's going to be more representative of what you're going to be working with inside of your game. But it's just good to have that access to that setting. Okay, let's talk about our sculpting options and what we can do here. First thing that I want you to do and look at is your presets. These are all Metahuman characters that Epic Games has created already. These are going to be your baselines. I will talk more about why that is the case in a second, but you can scroll through and see. For this sake, I'm going to use Kelvin because I've used him in other projects before as my baseline. You just double click a preset and it's going to change your Metahuman on your screen after a quick load to that character. So now I have Kelvin on my screen. You can see it's a totally different facial structure. If I go to topology, we can start to see how that topology changes. I'll go back to the studio lighting or the clay. I can start to see some of those minute details as well. The first tab on the left is your body tab. So there's a few ways that you can conform and sculpt your bodies on your characters. The first way is this blend mode. This lets you select from existing characters and blend between them. So if you are looking through all of these presets and maybe you like the kind of slim Kelvin and a little more bulky Bruce, you can start to use those as blend targets and kind of mesh between them a little bit. So I recommend that you play with this, especially as you get started, because it gives you a lot of early power to be able to explore the power of metahumans. So like I said, from our body menu and our blend, if I like, Kelvin, and I like Bruce, now as I can go around, there's little dots around the body, and I can start to drag those between different areas on a loop, and we'll start to see how it blends between the two body types that I've selected. It's a little finicky, so it'll take some getting used to as you're doing it. As a kind of rule of thumb, everything is symmetrical with your Metahuman editor as it stands right now. So if I just adjusted my left arm on my character, it's also adjusting the right arm. So that means that even though I see a ton of dots across my body, I'm only really interacting with half of them. Does that make sense, everybody? So the next way is we have our conform methodology. This is where if we had that DNA data, we could start to grab it and input it or grab it from a template. We're not really going to use our conform option here. What you might opt to use is the modeling tool, and this gives you a ton of parametric data. You can scroll through for probably an hour and mess with all these things. What I would highly recommend that you do is before you change a value, note where it started. Does that make sense? That way, if you really mess something up, you can just type in the value and get it back. So just mentally note it. All right, let's move to our head and our face. So again, we have our blend mode. So same thing, if I like Kelvin and Bruce's face and I want to find a happy medium between them, I can put in those blend targets and start to drag my options in that area to be able to do that. Conform, again, we're not using the DNA options. We're not going to use conform, but we might use our transform tool. So if I go to the transform tab, now I can grab those dots and physically move. So maybe I want a shorter brow, maybe a narrower cheekbone, maybe a shorter nose, right? A little more inset. Maybe I want my temple to come out just a touch. So there's a ton of options, and you can rotate around your character. So I can go to the back of my head, kind of flatten it out a little bit. And now I'm starting to get closer to the character that I envisioned in my story. Does this make sense? Sculpt, similar to our last one, has a ton of options. It opens up a lot more options across the face. So this is where it can get a little overwhelming. But I can start to bring in some smaller details, make his lip a little bigger, bring his chin in just a touch, make the top of his nose poke out, the sides of his nose come in, make his eyes a little wider, things like that. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Our teeth and eyelash setting. This is something that you're not going to really see a lot of, even though we are doing facial animations with our characters. The teeth don't tend to follow super well, but you do have a lot of options here. You can change the length of your teeth, the kind of offset of those teeth. If you need to have some jaggedness, some changes there. Maybe they have really clean, sharp teeth. And this is also where we can change like how far open our jaws go. If we have overjet on our teeth, things like that. And then same thing with our eyelashes. This is a really tiny detail that you're probably not going to see at all, but I can have thicker lashes, thinner lashes, so on and so forth. These would be for really tight close-up shots of your character. We're not going to see a lot of that in our cutscenes from what I've seen. From here, we can go into our materials. So materials is where we can start to change the color of our skin tones. By default, it gives you a lot of human skin tones across the kind of spectrum here. And so you can kind of tune in the skin tone that you want there. You can also change your skin texture here. There's some default values for skin texture. This is where we can start to add in things like freckles on our characters. We can change accents, add some redness to our head or rosy cheeks, things like that. We can hop into our eyes and we can select different eyes. Something that's kind of fun is that you can be asymmetric with your eye selections. So you can choose a different left eye from a right eye, right? And that'll change how those look in your character. So we have some options there. This is also where we can find makeup. So if we want to apply some foundation or change the color of that foundation, we can increase or decrease the intensity of it. If you want some eyeshadow, you can throw some eyeshadow on. Think of these options not only as makeup in like the feminine sense, right? Adding in that way, but you can also think of it as like a stage makeup, right? Something that improves clarity on your character. So like I might, because this is my commander, he might be really tired. So I might put this eyeshadow on to kind of represent that deep sunken eye look that I want to kind of portray on my character. So you can see like the difference between having it and not having it kind of deepens that eye a little bit. Same thing with blush. We can add some blush. If you have a feminine character or you want your character to have lipstick, you can have lipstick. This also helps you if you want to like just change the skin tone on your lips as well. Maybe you don't have a humanoid creature or a human from Earth creature in that sense. And then coming back to our teeth, we can add some yellowing to our teeth. Maybe he's real weathered in that sense. Can change the color of the plaque. There's a lot of options in here. And then finally, we have hair. This is where we're a little bit more limited than I want to be. There's not a ton of groom options in here. But I might have my character be balding. I might change my eyebrows so that they're a little thicker. I might have my beard come in a different way. Might have the fun handlebar mustache. Right? And so you can start to see this all come together. Have this sharp, pointy beard. You know, and start to build out these characters so that they match your vision. Does this make sense to everybody? Drake, what's up? There is only one option for clothing as it stands right now. You've got kind of your naked in a tank top and briefs, and then you've got a white t-shirt right now. The only other free option that I have available at this exact moment in time is this default kind of tracksuit that you see on my characters. Every now and then when they come on and off. So I can show you, this is the tracksuit that I have. And so if you are interested in that tracksuit, that is something I can provide for you. But this was also a part of that storyboarding warning where I really wanted you to focus shoulders up because I knew we didn't have a lot of optionality when it came to our clothing. This is a skill set of development that is not in my expertise. So if at the end of the semester, as we're wrapping up our projects, you want to dive into groom or clothing for metahumans, that could be a really fun project. Does that make sense? So you're very limited. Drake. Not from what I can tell, but you might be able to play around inside of your content drawer. The last thing that you have access to as a setting is your assembly. This isn't going to work for you, so just don't touch your assembly. What I'm going to ask for my sake is that on Monday at the end of class, make sure that I can find your character. Whether you drag it into your content folder or it's in your characters folder or you have a Metahuman folder. Those would be the three places that I prefer to find your character. Because if I have to spend 20 minutes finding your character before I spend the 20 minutes rigging your character, it's just going to make me grumpy. So that's what I've got for you. You guys are set free today and through the end of Monday to build your characters. Got it? Okay, get to it. I'll upload this video.